Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. It's good to see so many bright, shiny faces here tonight. And I'd ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, and I'll look to Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. I have a non-pecuniary interest to declare an item C2, the in-zone update, as my brother is employed by a company that's named in the report. It's caught under the it's not caught under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, but it is caught under our own Code of Conduct, and so I'm noting it as required in our Code of Conduct, and as per our Code of Conduct, I'll continue taking part in the discussion on the item.
Thank you, Councillor. Here we go. We now need two members of council to favor us with a motion and a second to resolve in the committee of the whole. Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Duddick, all in favor, and that carries. And we are now, the only thing, Councillor Knoll, the only thing wrong with paperless is when the electronic paper runs away from the screen you leave it on. The first item before us is the consent item, being the assumption of stormwater management pond drainage channel and portion of Colonel William Parkway within a subdivision by Monarch and Liptay. This is item 1 on the agenda. Are there any members of the public here on this matter? I don't see any. Councillor Elgar? Councillor Elgar,
I'd be pleased to move the consent item.
Is moving the consent item. All in favor? Opposed? And the consent item is approved. And now we have confidential consent items C1 and C2. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to discuss the item C1, but be happy to move that to the end of the agenda if you'd like, or to move that happens, or
all right.
However. Thank you.
And C2, is there a mover for C2? Councillor O'Meara. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? C2 is adopted. And C1, we will delay. That brings us to the public meeting report for the zoning bylaw amendment for the trustees of Hopedale Presbyterian Church, 156 3rd Line. And this is on the west side of 3rd Line, north of Salvatore Boulevard. And if you'll give your attention to Mr. Rob Thun from our planning department, he will reprise for the public the files that council has already studiously read and examined. Mr. Thun, we're all ears.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. This is the statutory public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by the trustees of Hopedale Presbyterian Church for their property at 156 3rd Line. It's a rezoning with the ultimate intent is to create 2 residential lots. The report can be found on page 13 of tonight's agenda. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to obtain further public input related to this application. As always, we will return to council following the comprehensive review of the application with a recommendation report. The slide before council right now is an air photo just giving the context of the surrounding area. The area where the 2 lots proposed are highlighted. The church is just to the north of it. 3rd Line is to the east. Salvatore Boulevard is just to the south. As can be seen, there are residential uses that surround the church property. From a livable Oakville plan, or the official plan perspective, the property is designated low-density residential. The low-density residential designation does permit detached dwellings and has a maximum density of 29 units per site hectare. From a zoning bylaw perspective, zoning bylaw 2014-014, the property is zoned, the entire property is zoned community use. Tonight's application before council, the applicant is seeking a site-specific amendment for the, as I had mentioned, to create 2 lots in the future with an RL2-0 zoning, and that is similar to what is surrounding the property to the south and to the east. There are no changes in the regulations that are being proposed, so this is only a map change. It is not a regulation change. The development plan before you on the slide, you will see there are 2 parcels, one to the south, parcel A, and one to the north, parcel B. They are in the southeast corner of the property. They will have frontage on Third Line. Driveway access will be from Third Line. Public information meeting was held on March 21st. There were 9 members of the general public in attendance. No concerns were raised at that meeting. Just to give you a little bit of perspective for the future, should things proceed in a positive light, a consent application would be required to create the 2 lots. And following that, site plan approval where we would get into detailed grading, drainage, house elevations, driveway locations, tree preservation, all will be looked at from a site plan perspective. So those would all be looked at in detail for those 2 lots, should things proceed in a positive light, as I had mentioned. So just in conclusion, Your Worship and members of council, staff are putting forward the recommendation on the screen. It is to be received. Once again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to obtain public input into the application for furthering the technical review and part of our recommendation report at the end of the day. Thank you, Your Worship and members of council.
Thank you, Mr. Thun, very much for that summary. Are there any members of the public with information on this file for council or staff? Madam Clerk, I see none. Councillor Robinson, did you have something on this?
Well, Your Worship, I have a motion, but I would just like to ask the staff a question. Have you any possible idea at all, Mr. Thun, when the next meeting will take place that will make the final decision on this application?
Through Your Worship to the councillor, we will do our best to get this expedited as quick as possible. It is contingent on the rectification of any concerns that have been raised so far to date. There are some issues that have been raised by Region of Halton with regards to Phase 1. I'd like to get those resolved, and then the potential is to get this back to council, hopefully before the summer recess.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that we approve the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Was there a member of the public in the back that ma'am, would you like to, do you have information for council? If you, please come to the microphone so we can hear you, and so the folks at home can hear you. And if you'd be so kind, just introduce yourself, and then please share your information with us.
Your Worship and council members, my name is Patty Fedoric, and I'm Yes, and that's just what I wanted to address. We weren't here for the information meeting that happened on March 21st. We were away, so we were unable to attend. So what I presented this morning in an email, in which I understand you were just received this evening, is voicing our concerns with regard to a retaining wall as our property abuts parcel A. So it's, if this goes forward, I guess at that time, those concerns can be addressed. I don't know if it's appropriate to address them here.
So you're doing exactly the right thing by bringing the information forward, and staff are duty-bound to consider it as they decide what to recommend at a later stage when they bring the recommendation report.
Okay.
And the letter you wrote is a model of clarity. There's no doubt whatsoever as to what the issue is. So I
That's good.
congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson has moved receipt and the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. So that brings us to item number 3, which is the public meeting and recommendation report. On the town-initiated site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to bylaw 2014-14, and this is as regards the northeast corner of Burl Oak Drive and Rebecca Street, 105 Garden Drive and 1498 Wallace Road. And to demystify this for the public, here and at home, we have Gabe Charles. It's all yours, Gabe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, as the mayor had noted, this is a public meeting recommendation report for town-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to 2014-14. It is a housekeeping bylaw. And as we go through and continue to use bylaw 1414, it is an ongoing initiative to always find ways to improve the document. We find little minor things that require clarification, or at least should be clarified. So this is what this exercise does at this point. And it does address 3 properties in particular, at Burl Oak and Rebecca, at 1498 Wallace, and 105 Garden Drive. So in order, what you'll see on this particular slide where the arrows are identifying two spaces which are being changed to account for a board decision in 2011 which didn't necessarily translate the zones in particular to the property line. So what it does is this housekeeping allows the zone boundaries themselves to properly align with the property limits. So it does address the business commercial E4 and the business employment E2 zones. The next matter is at 1498 Wallace Road. And this one is with respect to moving the line. When the line was originally drawn as part of the 1984-63 bylaw, the line went up and around 1498 Wallace, as is shown in the circle there. When the new official plan went through in 2009, the line that came across that denoted the space between office employment and the business commercial went to the south of 1498. So what this has the effect of doing is putting the bylaw into conformity with our official plan. The final item at 105 Garden, which council may note as the memory care application, which is at Garden and Lakeshore, when that bylaw had gone through as part of 1984-63 as a site-specific, it was very specific to being reflective of a retirement home or as a long-term care facility. When the site-specific was translated into Part 15, it didn't include those very specific terms of being a long-term care facility. So what the bylaw has the effect of doing is just putting those phraseologies back in and ensuring that there's a continuity of the intent of ensuring that it is for a long-term care facility or a retirement home. And so those are the three matters that are part of this housekeeping. The recommendation is on this slide. If there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. Council, are there any questions? Are there members of the public with information for council on this matter? I'm looking extra hard this time. Yes, sir, or ma'am? Please come up and introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Council, Mayor and Council. My name is Alita Eiserman, and I own the property on at 1502 Spears Road at the corner of Wallace and Spears. I'm just wondering what exactly the zoning was below it that they're changing now, and what specifically.
So, Mr. Charles, would you like to help the lady?
Mr. Mayor, the zoning as is currently in place is an E1 zone, which is office employment. And that is incorrect in terms of what the permissions were previously and in terms of how it would align with the business commercial uses that are in the official plan. In the graphic to the right of the slide, the area in the pink, the purple there is the site in question. And what that does is that makes the zoning on that site consistent with our official plan. It brings into the E4, which is business commercial.
So it would appear to me that perhaps there's no impact on you, ma'am? Is that right?
No, I just wanted to know exactly what was changing. So essentially then the same zoning that we have right now is going to just farther. Okay, that's all I want to know.
Thank you very much for asking.
Thank you.
Council, we only need one of you to get us to make a decision. Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Chisholm moves the staff recommendation. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. All right, our discussion item number 4, is the recommendation report for the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments of 2378224 Ontario at 231-237 Rebecca Street. And the recommendation before council, there's going to be a presentation from Leigh Musson to assist everyone at home and who may not have there may be people who haven't read the report, not on council, and I think the audience has all read it, but anyway, we're gonna have a reprise of the report. And I just want to read out the recommendation first. The recommendation is that in accordance with Section 3417 of the Planning Act, that no further notice is determined to be necessary, that official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications submitted as revised be approved, that bylaw 2017-16, a bylaw to adopt an amendment to the Livable Oakville Plan, be passed, and that bylaw 2017-17, an amendment to zoning bylaw 2014-14 be passed, and that notice of council's decision reflects that the comments from the public have been appropriately addressed. And with that, Leigh, we are all yours.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. This evening you can find my staff report on page 29 of your agenda. This is a recommendation meeting for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. These applications were received in September of 2014. They were deemed complete on September 25th, 2014. A public information meeting was held in November of 2014, and a statutory public meeting was held in February of 2015. 5 residents spoke at the statutory public meeting. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide a recommendation on the subject applications. The site is generally located east of Dorval Drive on the north side of Rebecca Street and is municipally known as 231 and 237 Rebecca Street. The property is approximately 0.13 hectares in size. It has 33 meters of frontage on Margaret Drive and 38 meters of frontage on Rebecca Street. Each property contains a detached dwelling oriented towards Rebecca Street. The effect of the official plan amendment would be to redesignate the lands from low-density residential to medium-density residential. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would permit the site to be developed for 6 townhouse units. This is a slide of the original concept submitted in 2014. It illustrates that there are 6 townhouses proposed, oriented towards Rebecca Street. Access is proposed from Margaret Drive by way of a 6-meter wide private lane, which is proposed to be a common elements condominium. The original elevations for the development shows the 6 townhouse units with a 15.9 meter overall height. The rear elevation again shows a 15.9 meter overall height with balconies along the top floor and a terrace above the carport. This is a slide of the side elevation, again showing the 15.9 meter height, the balconies along the top floor, and the terrace above the carport. There was a number of revisions through the processing of this application, which had the effect of reducing the height. This concept shows that a driveway, the rear lane, was moved further south from basically it was located previously along the lot line. It was moved further south into the site, and this was in an attempt to save a hedge that is currently existing along the rear lot line. In terms of the front elevation, you'll notice that the building has reduced in height from the 15.9 meters. It's been reduced to 12 meters. The balconies that were at the rear of the building are now at the front of the building, overlooking Rebecca Street. The balconies were relocated to Rebecca Street to mitigate potential overlook and privacy issues that were raised by the Berkeley Square residents. This is the rear elevation. Again, you'll see the 12-meter height, and the balconies along the top floor have now been removed. Again, this is a side elevation. The balconies facing Rebecca Street are actually inset, and the terrace, there's been no change to the terrace. In terms of the livable Oakville plan, the site is designated as low-density residential, as identified on Schedule G, the Southeast Land Use Plan. Directly north and east of the lands are designated as medium-density residential, and to the south, the lands are designated as high-density residential. On the west side of Dorval Drive, the former D&D lands are designated as medium-density. The existing official plan designation allows the site to be developed for detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and duplexes. This is a slide showing the proposed official plan amendment. On the left side is the existing official plan designations. On the right side is the proposed mapping changes to redesignate the lands from low-density residential to medium-density residential. Medium-density residential land use permits a range of medium-density housing types, which include multiple attached dwellings or townhouses, at a density range between 30 to 50 units per site hectare. This proposal has a density of 46 units per site hectare. Section 4.3 in the town's official plan encourages intensification generally throughout the built-up area, It also recognizes that some growth and change may occur outside of the town's growth areas, provided that the character of the area is preserved. And I will speak a bit more about character shortly. Sections 11.1.8 and 11.1.9 in the town's official plan governs intensification within the stable residential areas. The proposed medium-density development would be appropriate based on the conformity with the applicable criteria noted in section 11.1.9, as it was determined that the proposed development maintains the character within the neighborhood as follows. The subject lands are surrounded by medium and high-density development to the north, east, south, and west, and as such, the proposed townhouse form is compatible with the surrounding land uses and the character of the area. The scale and massing of the revised proposal is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, given the development setbacks and resulting separation distances between the adjacent buildings. The height of the revised proposal is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, as the proposed height of the 3 stories and 12 meters provides an appropriate gradation in height from the apartment development to the south and the subject lands, the Berkeley Square condominium, to the north. This development represents a logical extension of the surrounding built form, and the subject lands can be adequately serviced. In addition, the relocation of the 3rd floor balconies to face Rebecca Street assists to mitigate any overlook and privacy concerns to the Berkeley Square development. The site is accessible by public transit, and schools are located in the vicinity. Traffic generated from the addition of 6 residential units can be accommodated on the existing road network. The proposed official plan amendment is attached to this agenda as Bylaw 2017-016. Under Bylaw 2014-14, the lands are currently zoned RL3 O suffix, which permits detached dwellings. The applicant has submitted an application to amend the town's zoning bylaw to rezone the lands to a site-specific RM1 or a residential medium 1 zone to implement the proposed medium-density residential land use and establish appropriate regulations for the lands. This is just a zoning comparison. For a standard RM1 zone, the minimum lot area per unit is 135 meters squared. The site-specific, or what's being proposed on this site, is a minimum lot area of 198 meters squared per unit. Minimum lot frontage is increased from 30.5 to 38 meters. You'll notice the minimum front yard in an RM1 is 4.5. The applicant is reducing this to 3 meters. The effect of this reduction is to pull the building closer to Rebecca Street, away from the Berkeley Square development. The minimum flankage yard, or the yard adjacent to Margaret Street, under a parent bylaw of RM1 is 3 meters. This is being reduced to 1.2 meters. Again, the effect of this is to move the building, again, further away from the Berkeley Square development. The corresponding increase, then, of the interior side yard setback of 1.2 meters to 2 meters. In terms of the rear yard, an RM1 zone requires a minimum 6-meter rear yard setback. The site specific for this is being proposed at 7.5 meters for the garage or carport, and 11.4 meters to the dwelling. There will be no change in the bylaw in front of you this evening. The maximum number of stories will remain at 3 meters, and the maximum height will remain at 12 meters. 3 stories, and 12 meters. The minimum landscaping coverage under an RM1 is 10%, and the site specific for the site is 18%. And in terms of parking, parking required on an RM1 zone for 6 units is 12 spaces, and the applicant is providing 20. The proposed zoning amendment meets or exceeds the zoning regulations for an RM1 lot, with the exception of the front yard and the flankage yard setbacks. Again, reducing the front yard and flankage yard setbacks has the effect of locating the proposed building further away from the Berkeley Square development. In terms of matters to be considered, the staff report goes into detail with regards to physical context, compatibility, height, privacy and overlook, trees, traffic, parking, drainage, servicing, garbage, and snow removal. And I want to go through a little bit with regards to the physical context. The lands bounded in red were part of a town-initiated comprehensive land use study, which commenced in 2005, which predated the Livable Oakville plan. The purpose of that land use study was to assess existing and potential land use options for 24 individual properties to facilitate a comprehensive approach to redevelopment. The 24 properties at that time were designated as residential low density. Also at that time, there was a developer that had acquired some of the properties that had submitted site-specific rezoning and official plan amendment applications. The subject lands were outside of the study area and were not assessed as part of that study. In terms of the current application, the town is obligated to process the application and review it in the context with the surrounding land uses. And I'm just going to go through that quickly. In terms of the former D&D lands, these are west of the subject site. There's 3-story townhouses that were approved in 2012, and heights range from 12.25 meters to 13.05 meters. The Van Dyke Wyndham Place, south of the subject site, is a 4-story apartment building approved in 2007, consisting of 99 apartment units with a height, I'm going to show you this, with a height of 13.1 meters at the lowest part of the roof. West Oakville Downtown Homes, southeast of the subject site, is a 6-unit, 3-story townhouse development approved in 2007. The height of this development is 11.6 meters and 14.3 meters, which is to the stairwell structure that provides access to a rooftop terrace. The Barclay Square development, which is north and east of the subject lands, which was approved in the 1980s and consists of 47 2-story townhouse units and 18 semi-detached units. Townhouses directly abut the subject land. The height for the 2-story townhouses in the zoning bylaw is 10.5 meters. As part of the processing of this application, staff did undertake some 3D modeling prepared by another planner within the department. The green building reflects the proposed development. This slide actually gives a larger context. This slide shows, it's looking to the west. You have the D&D lands in the background, and to the left, you have the Van Dyke development. The Barclay Square development is located to the right. This slide is looking northeast from the school. Van Dyke site is to the right of the screen with the Barclay Square development in the background. I want to touch base with the spatial separation. This slide illustrates the spatial separation between the proposed building and the adjacent buildings on the abutting properties. The proposed building will be set back approximately 11.4 meters from the multiple attached dwelling units to the east, 13.8 meters from the multiple attached dwellings fronting onto Margaret Drive, and 33.5 meters from the multiple attached dwellings units north of the site. As a result of the development, the setbacks and resulting spatial separation between the adjacent buildings are generally in keeping with the neighborhood. Now this slide illustrates the building envelope, now not the footprint, the building envelope for a single detached dwelling in accordance with the existing zoning on the site. Lot 1, which is the lot adjacent to Margaret Drive, you could potentially have a single detached dwelling with a 9-meter height, 3.5 meters off the lot line, adjacent to the dwelling at 161 Margaret Drive, whereas currently the proposed building is proposed to be 11 meters off of that lot line. Height, I've already touched on height. The original height in 2014 was 15.9 meters, and through a series of revisions, the height has been reduced to 12 meters, and there's no change proposed to the RM1 zone. This provides an appropriate transition or gradation between the apartment building to the south, the townhouses to the west, and the Barclay Square development. Again, I've already spoken a little bit about overlook. Originally, the balconies were proposed on the rear elevation. Balconies are now proposed to front on Rebecca Street, and the rear deck is still proposed over the garage. Through the site plan process, additional plantings can be reviewed between the rear lane and the fence. This landscape strip and buffer area on the budding lands are expected to minimize overlook and privacy issues. Although not normally part of a rezoning application, the applicant prepared a conceptual landscape plan for review. The applicant is proposing to supplement an existing hedge along the rear lot line with additional hedge and tree plantings. Details in terms of species and height will be reviewed as part of the future site plan process, but this current proposal, the applicant is proposing 6 beech trees and 40 cedar trees. There is also a vegetated buffer and a private dry pond located on the abutting lands, and the plantings within these areas will also assist to screen the proposed development. This is, again, back to the 3D model. This illustrates, again, the separation distance between the proposed development and the existing buildings on Barclay Square. In terms of traffic, the traffic generated from 6 residential units can be accommodated on the road network. Again, I mentioned already about parking requirements. 12 parking spaces are required. The applicant is proposing 20 parking spaces. Final drainage, servicing, garbage, and snow removal will be reviewed as part of the future site plan application. We have reviewed grading, drainage and servicing plans, and we're satisfied the application could move forward. In terms of conclusion, the subject report recommends approval of official plan amendment and site-specific zoning bylaw amendment. The height, design, and massing of the proposal is appropriate and compatible with the adjacent land uses, and is in keeping with the intent of the land use policy of the Livable Oakville Plan. The proposal is a logical extension of the surrounding development in the area and represents appropriate infill intensification within a stable residential neighborhood given the context. The proposal represents good planning. My recommendation is set forth on the, in my staff report. Staff are recommending that the council approve the application and that bylaw 2017-16, a bylaw to adopt the amendment to Livable Oakville plan be passed, and that the bylaw 2017-17 be passed, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Musson. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have several questions, one of which is you went through, I think it was the context a couple of slides back where you showed the D&D properties, you showed the Maurice Garden Land Study, and various other things. I guess the problem, I'm thinking in terms of the D&D property, that was a special land use study area. Okay, so that wasn't, it had a comprehensive study that was done with that. The Maurice Garden, we went through a very comprehensive land use study for that as well. When we did our Livable Oakville, we did a comprehensive land use study on that, and we did not change the designation on this property. Even through the in-zone process, that did not percolate to the surface. So why suddenly change from the low density that we have now to the other? And if that's the case, why wasn't it brought up prior to this?
The Livable Oakville plan, when it was in its creation, it didn't look at specific properties. It looked like at the Livable Oakville as a whole. It didn't drill down into individual properties. It brought forward policies on how to look at intensification within these areas, but it wouldn't have specifically looked at this site. We have this application in front of us. We're obligated to process it. We're obligated to look at it in terms of the context of the Livable Oakville plan. The Livable Oakville plan does give us policies in which to look at intensification outside of the growth areas. It's not to say you can't have growth outside of the growth areas, but it does give us the criteria to look at it. So through the processing of this application, we were able to look at those criteria, and it's in our opinion that this fits given the context in the area.
Thank you. I guess the other aspect is, during the Maurice Garden Land Use Study, several of the issues that are coming to play in this for the residents in the immediate area was also prevalent through that. Given the fact they were not wanting a built-out, built form, they wanted to have space so that they had open spaces through the development, and they didn't get subjected with the wall. The fact that we're going from 2 single-dwelling homes, granted those were bungalows, so you would be going to a 2-story, but that's only 10.5 meters. You would still have a visual break in that wall versus a long continuous brick wall that is going to be facing people in their backyards and side yards. how have we addressed that issue in terms of giving additional space, viewing nothing other than a brick wall? Is that not considered?
Through you worship to the councillor, if townhouse is an appropriate fit given the context, what zoning does is it approves a 3D box on a site. Whether, so you think of it as a 3D box, and whether that 3D box is 6 units or it's 5 units or it's 4 units, you could still potentially have the same mass. Given the separation distance between the, this is a very unique site given the fact Barclay Square has that buffer area, it has the dry pond. You have a 33.5 meter setback between the back of this building to the back of the Barclay Square buildings. You won't find that typically. So with that separation distance, there are, in my opinion, there are views that can happen through there. It's not like it's back to back.
I guess the other question is, you talk about the privacy and the overlook, and yes, the balconies have been moved to the Rebecca Street frontage. However, you still have overlook from windows looking down into somebody's living bedroom area. How are we addressing the lack of privacy and overlook from that standpoint?
Again, through your worship to the councillor, through the site plan process, we can look at some screening in terms of planting within the strip. Whether it was a 3-story building or a 2-story building, you're going to have windows along that edge. Again, given the separation, 33.5 meters, there's going to be less of an overlook issue than if it was, if those townhouses were right adjacent to the back of that property. Again, moving the balconies was important from a planning perspective to get that overlook away from the Barclay Square. The lower terrace on top of the carport, again, when you have the screening that's proposed with the landscape plan, that will assist in mitigating the overlook. The buffer area between that's on the Barclay Square land, it does have some vegetation within there, and that can again assist in mitigating overlook.
Okay, I guess that's subjective. The other question I have relates to the creep factor. And again, that was prevalent through the Maurice Garden land study. And numerous residents on the north side said to planning staff and members of council at the time, are we going to be faced with the same situation? In other words, built out form. And we were assured at the time that North Rebecca was treated differently than South because that was the comprehensive land study. How do you address the creep factor now if you have 2 single dwellings that go to 6 units? In other words, where do you stop integrating or proceeding with this built form? Because we now have Maurice, we have Dean, we have other ones on Margaret. What kind of assurance do people have that we're not going to be doing the same sort of thing?
This site again is unique in that I call it the hole in the donut. You have residential low density surrounded by medium density and high density. So that makes that site unique. I think you're referring to the lands that are further east. Every application will have to be reviewed on a site-specific basis on its own planning merits. We can't guarantee that there wouldn't be an application coming forward. We can't refuse an application at the door. Applications have to come in and we need to process them and we need to evaluate them in terms of the merits and in terms of the context.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Your Worship. Your comment with a hole in the donut. It seems this property is a very small, unique piece of property, and we're really pushing the envelope, so to speak, with the character aspect and the context of what you're talking about. I guess the question is, why do we want to rezone this to a medium density when the appropriateness of that area, which I understand has been in the books as low residential area, all of a sudden, one little piece of property, we are starting to say we need to change this in order to maximize. So the question has to be asked, as the developer is maximizing, of course he's going to probably expand his profit margin on this, but at the backs of the neighbors, the residents, I have some real concerns about that. So with all due respect, the massing is an issue, the the rezoning to do this, to move forward, and impacting so many individuals in Barclay Square for a small piece of property does not make common sense to me. Thank you.
Very good question, Councillor. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. You have a slide where you show the pictures of some of the buildings across the street on Dorval, the old D&D lands. Would you pull up that slide? I'm just trying to figure out, is that a 3-story with some kind of loft on the top, making it a 3.5-story, or is it really 3-story with a fake upper level? What are those windows at the very top? Is that actually a 4th floor?
Through you, your worship, to the councillor, I can't, I'm not familiar with the interior layout of these particular units, so I can't speak to how the layout of these units, what that top level is, whether it's attic or if
All
it's
right, then I'll
actually
go at it
usable.
a different way. The RM1 318 special provision that they've got, what does that allow? Do you know? In terms of height?
Sorry, which,
So on page 42 of the agenda, there's the zoning map is shown, and it shows it as RM1 special provision 318.
through your worship, well, that is a site-specific zoning for those lands. There was a height specified within that, within the zoning for those lands. I do know that there was a variance to the bylaw to increase the height, which gives you the range of 12.25 meters to 13.05 meters.
I'm sorry, to 13?
The range of height is 12.25 meters to 13.05 meters.
And that's within the special provision 318?
It was varied through a committee of adjustment application.
So 318 is through committee of adjustment.
Well, no, 318 was a site-specific zoning that was later amended through a committee of adjustment application.
So does 318 recognize the C of A adjustment?
It wouldn't.
So if I look up the figure in our zoning bylaw, it'll show me that number. So if I look it up here, I'm seeing additional zone provisions. Which block is that? Is that block 1 or 2 or?
I don't have that at hand.
You don't have that, okay. Then let's look at RM1 151, which are the lands immediately surrounding this area. So I understand how you're saying that this is the only block that's considered low density, and that everything else around it is medium density residential. But within the medium density residential official plan, we have a range of different zones, and RM1 is the basic one, and then we have all these special provisions. So 151 is a special provision for the lands immediately surrounding it, and it has a limitation of 2 stories. Why did we not choose to require a special provision on these lands, recognizing that everything immediately surrounding them is 2 stories?
Special provision 151 was a site-specific amendment which was done in the 1980s that reflected the development at the time. I don't know what the parent zone was prior to that. This particular site, given the context, it's oriented towards Rebecca Street. Given the RM1 zone of 3 stories and 12 meters, it was appropriate to limit that. The applicant originally wanted to amend the height in the zoning, and they wanted to amend the numbers. Well, they didn't want to amend, they wanted to amend the height, not the number of stories. But through our review, we made sure they reduced the height to comply with this parent RM1 zone.
Sorry, to maintain the height, but I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry, so the RM1 zone, the parent bylaw, allows 3 stories and 12 meters in height. Originally, the applicant wanted 15.9 meters. It wasn't appropriate to allow a 15.9 meter height building in this location, given the context. Through various revisions to the application, the height was brought down to maintain the parent height, which was an appropriate gradation given the height of the Van Dyke site to the south, the West Oak downtown towns, also southeast, and the D&D lands. It was an appropriate gradation. So when you're going from a 13 meter tall building to a 12 meter tall building to the 10.5 meter Barclay Square townhouses, it was an appropriate gradation. in height.
Okay, so it's the planning department's opinion that the gradation from going from Dorval to the other side of Dorval to two-story buildings, that gradation is adequate.
Yeah, through your worship, I mean, from a planning perspective, we're looking at context and we're looking at character. And the character and context does not necessarily mean the same as, it means is it compatible? And it's the planning department's opinion that a 12 meters high townhouse is compatible and is in character with the area.
Okay, that's all of my questions for now. I think you've got others.
Councillor Elger.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I guess I'm wondering how many areas similar to this particular site do we have in our livable Oakville plan today where the designations around allow for this to be jacked up higher than it should be? Like, is this a common thread we're going to, with our livable Oakville that we rave about how good it is that residents depend on?
Through your worship, I can't give you a number of sites that are similar to this, but keep in mind every application, if there's an application, we need to review it in terms of the context and the character and whether or not it's appropriate.
Ms. Closey's got something, I think.
Commissioner?
I just wanted to add to that. When we had originally undertaken Livable Oakville, there was a town-wide assessment of all of the properties within the town, not at a detailed level, but at a very high level. And the summary from that, and that was an independent study that was done for the town, was that there were a few properties in town, and that the decision was made through the subcommittee work that we had done with council that we would not identify those properties as part of that process. Whereas the Livable Oakville plan would establish policies that were quite specific in terms of evaluating the character of the development relative to 1118 and 1119, rather than go ahead and presuppose what an owner might want to do with those very few properties that were identified through the process. And I think as we go back in and as we've discussed at the Livable Oakville Subcommittee, what we will be doing in this round is actually going into some detail then to understand specifically those sites, as well as better identify the character through the neighborhoods. So I think it would be a bit of a stretch to say that there are a lot of these types of sites. I think there are very, very few. And we have policies within the plan 1119 in order to try and build some assessment of character around it, that the planning staff can assist council in understanding what that character is and bring you the information in order to make a decision on whether or not that you feel that character is being maintained.
Okay, I thank you for that, because I do feel that when people look at the official plan, they believe that's what they're going to have around them, and I think that's part of the problem. My concern is, and also I noticed people were commenting, and I have to agree, when I look at that three-story building that you're saying it is, it certainly looks like a 4-story building based on the fact that the garages are on the first level. And I wonder if we're on a slippery slope here, because maybe if I was the developer, I would say, you know something, that is a 3-story building, but what people want now in Oakville is really a double height garage so they can park a car one above the other. It's becoming common. It is becoming common. Would that be allowed if the developer asked for that particular garage to be double the height?
We don't have a height regulation in the bylaw. The review of this application through the zoning department has indicated this is a 3-story building. Even though you're saying that it appears to be 4 stories. Again, through the zoning, I had them look at it, it's a 3-story building. We haven't modified the parent bylaw with respect to this number of stories. We haven't modified the bylaw in terms of the height. If they come in for a building permit and it's deemed to be a 4-story building, then they don't comply with the zoning bylaw. Then they would need to redesign it. But from a zoning perspective, that's deemed to be a 3-story building.
So I could come in and double height my garage, and that would be allowed?
You need to stay within the height requirements of the bylaw.
So there is height requirements, but does the height requirement include if a double-story garage?
Zoning bylaw only has, it's like a stall size. It doesn't have a height requirement in terms of a garage. It's an overall height requirement for the building.
overall height requirement is the building itself.
Yes.
And the height requirement that they're allowed to go, the maximum would be how much?
In an RM1 zone, 12 meters.
15?
12,
12 in RM1.
yes.
Okay, I thank you. Thanks for the information.
Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious about what would be allowed there currently, again, in terms of some of the numbers if they were to just continue to build single-family dwellings. Did you say that the allowance would be 10.5 meters? Is that what it was for a single-family?
9 meters.
9 meters, okay. And then the setback from the lot line, I would assume that they would be entitled to keep an entrance off of Rebecca. So what would the rear setback be from the property line?
So I pulled up the slide for you.
Thank you.
So if there's a single detached dwelling, lot 1, you could have, and this is, again, this is not a footprint, this is a building envelope. You'd have a 9-meter tall house, 3.5 meters off of the lot line at 161 Margaret Drive.
Okay.
Okay, whereas right now, the proposal is 11 meters. Now, lot 2, the rear yard setback is 7.5 meters. Again, with a 9-meter tall house within that building envelope. When it's a single detached dwelling, access would remain off of Rebecca Street. You got to remember, Rebecca Street's an arterial road, as is Dorval Drive. When you have a townhouse development, we want to limit the number of access points onto an arterial. So the townhouse development would have the access off of Margaret Drive.
And in your experience, would that setback on the 161, the first one, would that have shadowing impacts on the house behind it? Would it be close enough to perhaps have shadowing impacts?
If there's a 9-meter house there, there would be shadow impacts. Having the house, the building set back 11 meters will assist in mitigating shadow.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Good, no, not yet. We'll have to wait, sir. You still have to wait. We'll get to you. We now know. I don't see any other councillors with questions, so perhaps I can have a couple. Ms. Musson, what's the justification for reducing the setbacks on the front and the flank?
The justification to reduce the front yard setback and the flank yard setback was to pull the building further away from Barclay Square and further to the west away from Barclay Square. Again, I'm trying to pull the building away to provide a larger separation distance between the Barclay Square development.
Okay, thank you. And on the, you have a slide that shows the proposal from the front, or you have several from the front, I think. I'd like to see one of your front views of the proposed project. So what I want to ask you about is, you notice how to get to the first, to what we're calling the first story, we climb stairs to get there? And I can think of other places, I think I've seen other places in Old Oakville with this approach. How high above grade could the front door be before you wouldn't call it the first story?
I don't have that number for you.
Is there such a number?
I don't believe there's a number in the zoning bylaw. The site itself is about a half a meter, a meter drop from the rear to the front. So to try to maintain the rear at the grade, they brought the building up through the stairs at the front.
And did you consider an alternative of having the parking in the rear be below grade?
The parking in the rear, there's a slight slope down to the garage. Didn't want to go too far down because of drainage. We don't want drainage to go into the basement of the units. There are drains within the driveway leading to the back, but in order to try to maintain, to reduce the amount of drainage that would go potentially into the units.
So do we have a regulation or a requirement to that effect? Because I can think of many properties in Oakville with a much greater below-grade approach to their front driveway, to their front garage, I mean.
I can't think of one in the zoning bylaw.
So this, if I hear you as saying it's a preference rather than a regulation, I wouldn't be argued with, would I?
We try to discourage, there's a name for it, but we try to discourage below-grade driveways for the slope, ice, water. This is a very slight grade.
Okay. So even if it's slight, you're still going to need you're still going to have to capture the water and drain it away.
There are drains in the driveway.
I understand. So, and the ones I'm thinking of that are quite deep, they have drains as well, for obvious reasons. Woe betide the homeowner doesn't keep them clear, of course. I want to now circle back to this question of the windows on the fourth level at the rear. Is there no way to prevent overlook by frosting those or glass blocking those or erasing those? Is there a right to have those windows looking at the homes to the north?
Through rezoning, we typically don't get to the detail that we're at in terms of elevations. When you're dealing with rezoning, you're zoning a 3D box. Elevations are something that we would look at through the site plan. I have not had a site plan where there's been a request to tint or glaze windows. But it's not something that I don't think the applicant would be interested. You could ask the applicant. I don't think he'd be interested in doing that kind of to restrict overlook in terms of the windows. Removing the balconies was a big step in the right direction. People tend to sit on balconies and have maybe their tea in the morning. I know from myself, when I look out my windows, I don't stand out my windows and look out for very long. I might sit on the balcony and enjoy the view.
But to my question, there's no right to have that window there. Is that correct, or is there a right to have that window there?
I believe there's a right to have a window there in order to have light into a unit.
All right, thank you. Would you call the delegations?
Our first delegation speaking to this item is David Harris.
Mr. Harris, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and councillors. My name is David Harris. My wife and I own a unit at Berkeley Square that is immediately to the north of the proposed development and only 100 feet away. We'll have a short list of speakers tonight, as many residents feel that they can be more eloquent with a written communication, many of which you will have received over the last few days. We also felt that in this public meeting you would not want to hear the same complaints repeated many times. 2 years ago, in February 2015, I stood before you in the previous public meeting on this topic, representing the residents of Berkeley Square and the south end of Margaret Drive, and presented to you our serious concerns about this development. The principal ones being, 1, invasion of our privacy by being overlooked from the 4th-story windows of such a tall structure. Let's be clear, as Councillor Elgar has pointed out, this is a 4-story structure as seen from Berkeley Square. The elevation of the driveway at the rear is actually 0.5 meters above the grade level of Rebecca Street. So from Berkeley Square, we are clearly looking at 4 complete stories. Secondly, The build-out of the structure to the property lines in every direction leaves no room within the fence line to replace the current mature trees, all of which will have to be removed to allow construction. Thirdly, a concern was that the request for a change in zoning to medium-density residential came immediately following the approval of the updated Town of Oakville zoning bylaw designating this site as low-density residential. And fourthly, there was the deviation from the maintenance of the character of the immediate neighborhood, which consists of two-story townhouses. At that time, Council was unanimous in its support of our complaints, and the development application was not approved. Since that time, as you've heard, the Town Planning Department has worked with the developer in an attempt to mitigate our concerns. However, the only changes that appear to have been made are, one, to reduce the maximum height of the roofline to 12 meters. This will still require rezoning and does nothing to change the height of the fourth-story windows looking down into our bedrooms and living rooms. Secondly, they've moved the footprint of the building slightly to the south and west, which still leaves little room for a tree barrier to the north, and none at all at the east end of the property, which directly overlooks units 1 to 3 at Berkeley Square. Thirdly, they relocated the decorative Juliet balconies, as we've heard, from the north to the south side of the structure. In other words, very little has changed in the intervening 2 years to lessen our concerns. And if Council was unanimous in not allowing this development to proceed in 2015, I see no justification for a different decision now. If the project is to go ahead, I believe a good solution would be to delete the fourth story of the building to mitigate some of our privacy concerns. This would also allow for a gradual height transition from the four-story Van Dyke development on the south side of Rebecca to the two-story townhouses of Berkeley Square. In addition, the overall footprint of the structure should be reduced, such that a meaningful barrier of trees could be planted on all sides between the structure and the Berkeley Square and Margaret Drive townhomes. In a nutshell, the proposed structure is far too large for this site and should not be approved. Thank you.
Thank you for your... We'll take that as additional delegations. Are there questions for Mr. Harris? Thank you, Mr. Harris, for your information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation speaking to this item is Bill Burns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Would it be possible to put up the plans, the town plans?
We can probably do that. Is there a particular piece you want?
I was looking at Schedule G, H, and I of the livable Oakville plan.
Okay. You have Schedule G.
Okay, we've got Schedule G. Okay. My wife, Maureen Donaher, and I live in Unit 21 in Berkeley Square, and I'm also the Secretary of the Board of Directors of Berkeley Square. We're writing to express our concerns about the proposed amendment to the official plan and zoning bylaws regarding 231 and 237 Rebecca Street. First of all, we're fully in agreement with the concerns about the negative impacts of the development in our community, as expressed by the previous speaker and as written by Bob Edwards, our director, or at least our president, as well as the Margaret Street residents. We appreciate the time Oakville Council and the staff have spent in preparing and regularly updating the Livable Oakville plan. And I understand there's been significant public effort into writing that plan. Schedule G, which is up above, is very clear. The areas between on Kerr Street, west of the creek between Lakeshore and Rebecca Street, and the center of the city, the town center, are all developed areas, and they are where the growth is proposed. This is different to, if you could put up Schedule H, please. Schedule 8 is the west land use, and you'll note that the growth area designated there is Palermo. Palermo is basically green fields. So you're working from green fields and adding capacity and living space up there as well. And the other one is Schedule I. Once again, it's the north town center. And that, too, has developed out of greenfields. So all of the development in the north two centers are from greenfields, and you can specify what you want. If you go back down to the southeast, the development is in-place areas. And I'll exclude the GO center there, the center of gravity around the GO station, because that is, to some extent, brownfield, where you've got abandoned industries and areas like that. The proposals, what I was going to say is Councillor Dudek was very emphatic in the previous go-around 2 years ago that her ward, our ward, has contributed significantly and adequately to the growth in the town. The proposal now under consideration by the Mayor and Council is to change the zoning bylaws from single-family residential to medium density for 231 and 237 Rebecca Street. Council must recognize that agreeing to the change the density for this one project will make it difficult to prevent other developers from the same consideration. Even though the planners have stated that local residents' concerns have been addressed, as you've heard from David, not necessarily. They haven't necessarily been considered. And the community is still faced with an out-of-scale massive structure to its south. As of April 4th, 2017, Council has not seen fit to designate the block bounded by Rebecca, Maurice, Dean, and Dorval. And maybe you could put Plan G back on. Please, thank you. So the area we're talking about, again, is, it's very hard to see, is just at the west side of the map, just above the purple area, which is still single and two-story buildings. It's not purple. It's still, as is, construction. It's not a formal growth area. Therefore, I don't think it's appropriate to permit it to become a growth area simply by allowing increased density on a piecemeal basis. It indeed seems backward to drive the livable Oakville plan by allowing a piecemeal basis totally out of scale projects requested by developers. And indeed, several years ago, a resident on Maurice Drive was told not to worry by Mayor Burton because the plan that we're now looking at had been approved by the province, had been tested in the court, and prevailed. If council agrees to this informal increasing of density, then the one or two story dwellings in the area, including Barclay Square and Margaret Street, could stand to be engulfed by massive blocks of 3 or 4 story condos. And specifically, I'm concerned now about the east side of our development. It's all single family dwellings on fairly shallow lots. And if we are allow the developers to put rows of 3 or 4 story buildings on that site, similar to the ones on John Street, similar to the ones on Rebecca, then they will be right at the property line. There's no allowance for 10 or 12 meters away from the existing houses. They would go right to the property line. So I guess the concerns expressed in the letters and the talks that you'll hear tonight will be repeated. We'll be back again for every development that you put up against our border. And by allowing the first one, then how do you prevent the second one? Especially when your plan is not designated as, this area is not designated as a growth area. Don't do it by default. Stick with the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, sir, for your information.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
The next listed delegation is Rick Varderzan.
Were we close? Can I see it?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Rick Vardaresian, and I live at 223 Rebecca Street, unit number 1, directly adjacent to the subject properties, or what's been lately referred to as the 3D box. So, my wife Leigh and I have lived in Oakville for over 65 years, and this town and its community has always been a source of pride for us. We understood change and the need for change in our community over the years. This particular proposal, as a part of the gentrification of our neighborhood, for use of a better term, is not right. This is not an inner city blight that needs to be replaced at any cost. One of the negative aspects of gentrification is the fact that development caters to those moving into the gentrified area and ignores the living standards, quality of life, and the privacy of those directly affected by this arbitrary plan for the two subject lands. We feel that's what's taking place here, and it has caused conflict and resentment in our community. Most site plan control bylaws are put in place to protect nearby properties from incompatible developments such as this one. I'm asking you as our elected officials to safeguard and protect our rights as residents. I do not feel the developer has shown any respect for the town of Oakville or our community, even with this amended proposal. They couldn't even send a body to clean up the refuse that's been sitting on the front lawn of these houses for over 4 years. My quiet enjoyment of my neighborhood means a walk with a pickup tool and a plastic bag to at least keep town property clean. My neighbors that have represented our concerns in this fight have done a wonderful job doing so. Honestly, we expect the same from council. Why not stick to the official plan for a livable Oakville? It would be interesting to see these properties developed without amendments. In closing, I would like to leave you with a quote from Mark Twain. It's never wrong to do the right thing. Thank you.
Mr. Vardaresian?
Yes, sir.
You've earned a question from Councillor Elgar.
Oh, I have. It's been a while.
Yep.
Rick, what would you accept as a ultimate solution that you think would please everybody?
You know what?
In the development.
Alan, when this went up, Councillor Elgar, I'm sorry, I've known this gentleman for about 30 years. When this went up, I was reminded of a tune by, I think it's Joni Mitchell, paved a parking lot, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. And that's basically what this is. It's too big, it's too intrusive. I live directly beside the east-facing lot, and they can't put trees in there. I phoned Leigh and asked about that specifically, and that, is it a 2-meter area between the property line and the building, is a swale for water runoff, I assume. So there's actually no buffer between the 3 units on the east side and unit number 6 of their proposal. So I'm stuck. I look at a 30 or 40 foot high building. I might as well be looking at this out of my back living room window with absolutely no privacy whatsoever. I think it's too big. I think the setbacks are too short. And I would like to see something lower. And I would like to see something that's set back from the east, at least the east part of the development.
The reason I'm asking is if council does not approve the staff recommendation and it does go to the Ontario Municipal Board, then the decision will be at that board, and I don't know what the, it's hard to say what the developer will go for. That's the dice we roll.
Well, I think the committee that was put in place, headed by David and Bob Edwards, knows more about that than I do. It's very intrusive. It's very intrusive for the people to the north. It's very intrusive to the 3 units, the 3D boxes on the on the east side. I can't give you specifics as to what I'd like, but it's just too big.
So what you want is less and more setbacks?
I want less.
and
I'd like
height.
to see the driveways come off of Rebecca Street, to be quite honest with you. They run, right now, with the proposal, the driveways would be facing my backyard. At night, there would be all kinds of traffic coming into the back end of my property, and units number 2 and number 3 as well.
Thank you very much for that.
Righto.
Thanks.
Madam Clerk?
The last registered delegation is Ronald Pearson.
Mr. Pearson, council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Do you mind if I have a drink before we start? My throat is quite parched. My name is Ron Pearson, and my wife's name is Lynn Pearson. As owners of Unit 48 in Berkeley Square, we believe there's insufficient justification to change the zoning to accommodate the construction of 6 townhouses at 231 and 237 Rebecca Street. Only 3 years ago, the area encompassing the site was set to low density residential by town planners. This was done with the forward thinking, in part to avoid overbuilding and harmony with current structures. Is there a new plan for the entire zoned area, or are we simply making a zone change to the first developer who comes along with a small lot and an overly ambitious plan without taking into account the vision set out by the town planners a number of years ago? Berkeley Square is unique. It's 48 semi-detached and attached condominium units are only 2 stories high and provide direct access to the outdoors from the main floors. Sunlight is unrestricted. Proposed development with 3 to 4 stories will look down on a number of Berkeley Square units, restricting sunlight, affecting privacy, and creating a hemmed-in feeling. At the council meeting on February the 9th, 2 years ago, it was clear that the vast majority of our town councillors and the mayor were not in favour of this development. Some accommodation had been made, but the same issues remain. We urge the developer to come back with a plan that complements Berkeley Square in height and appearance, which will in turn address the original vision. Let's go back to the bigger picture and avoid a precedent set for the next ambitious developer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pearson, for your information. Are there other members of the public with information for council that would fill in any gaps in what we've heard? Ma'am and sir, let's, maybe ladies first, if I can get away with that in this modern day and era. I did promise you earlier. Ma'am, please introduce yourself and share your information and take your time.
I want to thank, first of all, Mr. Mayor and councillors, and some very good points that the councillors have made. I really appreciate that. And some very good presentations, high quality, plenty of detail. And now you're going to just hear a simple one. My name is Mildred Lowes, and I live at Unit 10 Berkeley Square. I'm one of the most affected by the proposed building of the 6 townhouses on Rebecca Street. They are too high and too many for the size of the lot. I fear for the drainage. Now, I'm not an engineer, and they say they're going to put a tank underground, which my common sense tells me there's a problem with the drainage. The land isn't adequate enough to take the drainage. And I fear for the traffic, which we've already gone through that proposal. And I fear for the trees that are there and the vegetation, the sunlight is cut down. And the whole thing completely eliminates our privacy. Everything overlooks the patios and the bedroom windows. I know the premise is that the large townhouses and the apartments already that have been approved and built on Rebecca Street near Berkeley Square. So what are we concerned about? But the point is this: they did not affect existing residents and their homes, as this proposed development will affect our everyday living. It will be 2 years of dirt noise from 7 till 7, 6 days a week, God forbid, only 6 days a week. We certainly won't be able to take advantage of any of the summer weather. And I appeal to you not to vote yes on this proposal, and to ask for a plan that will be more in keeping with the present immediate neighborhood, that will be amenable to all parties. We're not difficult to get along with, the people in Berkeley Square and on Margaret. We just want fairness, that's all. And as councillors voted in by the people of Oakville to look after our welfare and our best interests, I ask you to consider us who live here and call Oakville our home, and not adhere to parties passing through for financial gain. And we could eliminate this whole thing completely. Would be my wish, is for the township to purchase those 2 lots and create a green parkette with a nice little green space amidst all of this brick and mortar and traffic and noise. We're always talking about saving the trees and the green space and the environment. Goodness knows we need it as much as we can get. So here's our chance, and it will grant a wish. Thank you.
Thank you for your information. Sir, it's your turn at last. I'm pretty sure. And I salute your patience.
Okay. My name is Ted Gale, and my wife Sheila and I are at 161 Margaret. We're probably the closest to the problem. Now, my thunder's been stolen by these gentlemen and lady because they've done a marvelous job in...
The mic will tilt up,
okay,
and it'll respect your height if you let it.
All right.
Well, you can do that too.
How's that? This is fun, isn't it? Anyway, I'll tell you, we're right on that corner. Okay.
No idea what I'm doing. No, try that.
Sheila's a retired. She's a retired school teacher, so she's played.
Make sure they can hear you.
Yeah.
You should keep her.
Thank you.
Okay.
Most of the things have been covered, but there's a few that I'd just like to discuss with very briefly. One has to do with this lane that will come right behind our house all the way through. And I know what happens when there's a lot of rain. There's a problem there somewhere. Now, it doesn't go into my house yet, but I'm wondering what's going to happen after they've paved over this. So that's one of them. The other one has to do with traffic. The high school generates a lot of traffic in the morning and in the evening. Parking, it can be a real problem because you can't park on this particular road. The garbage truck has a problem turning around at the bottom. I don't think anybody's really taken a look at these things. So I just wanted to bring it to the attention. And am I doing it again?
You're doing fine.
I'm doing just fine. Anyway, That's about all I wanted to say.
Well, you said it very well, and thank you very much
Great.
for adding your
Thank you very
information.
much.
So I'll now bring this matter to the table. No, we have another? One more or two more? Put your hands up so I can see your hands. So, all right, sir in the back, would you like to come down, introduce yourself, and share your information?
Godfrey from the Barclay Square. Just an observation, we've gone through the technical stuff, but I think the lady's presentation clarified that they're raising the level of the driveway because of the water problem. I think she's admitted that this site is inappropriate to the quality of the land that's going to be sitting on it. There is a water retention problem there, and I think that's the mission of part of the lady presented for the developers, that they're raising because they don't want water in the basements of these units. So I think that's an admission in my mind, naive as I am, that this is not the good land to put this place on. I'm sorry. They've admitted that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fay? Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. My name is David Fay. I'm the planning consultant for the applicant with this particular application. My client is fully in support of the staff recommendations with respect to this development. I would like to point out a little more thoroughly, perhaps, the changes that have been made since this project is quite different now than it was in 2014 when it was first proposed by my client. It was pointed out that the application was made in September 2014. There were two public meetings, one PIM and one statutory public meeting. The first in November 2014 and the statutory meeting in February of 2015. I was retained in September of 2016 by the applicant, who had made some changes to his proposal in May of 2016. And since I came on the team that he had assembled to work on this project, the team, along with the owner, has worked very diligently to introduce other changes to the proposal to respond to comments that have been made by the residents at the public meetings, by staff through their circulation of the application for comments, and by the ward councillors. Now, you've heard that the project was adjusted to try and respond to matters such as more room in the backyard of the development to separate it from the adjacent Barclay Square development. The driveway pulled further south to leave some additional room for tree planting, where in fact the initial development proposal didn't leave room for tree planting for a portion of the area abutting Barclay Square. So by moving the building closer to Rebecca Street and closer to Margaret Drive, the driveway could be pulled further to the south. The buffer area, which is not overly generous, I admit, but which will be able to provide some significant planting potential for buffering, and to save the existing cedar hedge, which is quite tall. The owner is prepared to fill out that buffer area with similar plantings of similar size. Certainly, my client heard the residents loud and clear with respect to the oversight, and the three-story balconies were moved to the front. We thought that was a step in the right direction with respect to oversight. We understand that the residents are still concerned about the terraces on the back of the units. We don't think these are anywhere near as much of a problem as they may think they are, but we're certainly willing to work with staff, if you approve this development at the site plan stage, to deal with that issue. You'll notice that the front walkways were realigned as the building was pulled closer to Rebecca Street, along with the porches. Grading was changed through the 3-meter widening area to comply with town standards more closely. New servicing reports and stormwater management reports were prepared to deal with matters raised by staff during the circulation. Ms. Musson mentioned the separation distances that exist between the Barclay Square townhouse units and the proposed 6 townhouse units, which distance are pretty significant in terms of the separation. As she's pointed out in her report, which I found very thorough, very professional, you don't normally find these kind of separation distances in similar situations. So my first point is this development is not the same, and I don't think the residents are seeing it as changed, but it has changed significantly. Although I admit it's still 6 townhouses on the site, that has not changed. But efforts were made to deal with a number of the concerns which I don't think the residents are really accepting in their comments tonight. The delegations have, I think, ignored the planning evidence that has been brought forward in the staff report as to why this development is appropriate. And I think it's council's job to certainly take the staff report into your full consideration. It's based on the planning reasons that this development is found satisfactory, and it's not based on emotion and the reactions we've heard here this evening with respect to the residents' wishes that this particular development not happen in that location. Certainly the height and massing is not inappropriate for the location, as you've heard from your professional staff. That it's in character with the area, meets the criteria in the official plan for the change, and represents good planning. Some of the issues raised by the residents, such as traffic and oversight and height and massing, have all been addressed in the staff report very professionally. And I would refer the staff's rationale to you for your careful consideration. Mayor Burton, members of council, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for your information. Councillor Delegate has a question.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Thank you very much, David, for the presentation. I guess I always, and it's a rhetorical question, but I need to ask it. Your client knew the zoning on the property when they purchased it, that it was low residential, correct?
Well, I wasn't part of that decision, but I'm sure he did.
Okay. Given the fact that Barclay Square, and the residents can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm of the understanding they have waiting lists. The development is so popular with the community that they have waiting lists wanting to purchase in that development. Why would the applicant not consider, and we asked this at one point, duplicating what is already a winning solution in the area? Why wouldn't they just go with continuing the Barclay Square development?
Well, I can't speak entirely. I'll give you my opinion as to the style of townhouse built in Oakville has changed significantly from the 1980s. I was in Oakville at the time in the 1980s. I don't recall this particular development. I do recall seeing it built, but I don't recall the circumstances of its approval. It itself would have been in a largely single-family detached area. I don't know whether any of you would remember whether or not there was controversy about the Barclay Square development at the time. Right? So it's not unusual as change is proposed, even modest change such as you're hearing tonight, that the existing residents oppose what is proposed. If it's accepted and approved and gets built, it becomes part of the community and ceases generally to be a problem. It doesn't diminish property values. It doesn't lead to a diminution in the lifestyle of the residents. Typically, it's all very positive. But in the short term, when the matters are being considered by council, they can be very traumatic for those in the existing area who tend to overreact to what is being proposed.
With all due respect, they live there. Question, in regards to the windows, it was raised during the presentation, and we asked the question in regards to windows facing from the fourth floor, or what's perceived the fourth floor. Has there been any consideration to do away with those, or similar to what the mayor raised, glass blocking, frosting, so as to maintain privacy? You had mentioned the overlook. The balconies are at the front, but that still doesn't address the overlooking issue completely.
I don't have any direction from my client with respect to the windows. Obviously, he would prefer to have the windows to allow for light within the building for the future residents if the development is approved. And certainly, I think the people who would buy these units would want the windows on the back as part of the package that they're requiring. Okay, and finally, you had mentioned the additional buffer strip or the landscaping. Mr. Verderesian raised the issue, and rightly so. When you look at page 33 and you look at the drawing, there's pinch points whereby there is no way you can put any kind of tree or landscaping or buffering there to assist the first 3 units, and I would suggest even some of the others that may be incorporated with that. What is the plan for that area? Because they seem to be left out of the equation. And again, I also raised the issue that as the cars come in and out, especially at night, you do get headlights shining into somebody else's house. Okay, now I can ask Leigh, was there a slide showing the landscaping, Leigh, in your slide deck?
It's not open.
Yeah, I tried.
There you go. Sometimes it could be the mouse.
Oh, I guess.
That's on everybody's screen now. You can see the area then along the northern boundary of the site. You will see a brownish area as you come in off of the cul-de-sac. There is a mature cedar hedge for a number of meters along that boundary right now, which seems to have thrived in the years past. And the effort is going to be made to save that existing cedar hedge, which is quite tall, and then use similar landscaping materials to add to it so that the cedar hedge will be extended both east and westerly to provide a buffer as close to the height of the buffer that is there when it's planted in the future. So the cedar hedge is going to extend along the entire northern boundary, notwithstanding that the area, the western end of that buffer is narrower than the eastern end, where there's a little bit more room. But that's not to say that the cedar hedge, which is a narrow conifer and can be planted in that area, and I think matching with what is there be quite effective. There were also proposed some additional tree planting, and this is by a professional landscape architect, so I take as given that he's considered the conditions and that the species proposed are suitable. Certainly the cedars seem quite suitable based on the height they have grown to date, and I don't think the reduction in the width of the buffer is going to be a significant detriment to that. So certainly to the east, where it will be wider by a couple of meters, provides greater opportunity as well.
Okay, sorry, maybe we're talking cross purposes. When I look at the driveway here, and I'm looking at the far easterly edge and thinking the units that are facing that, there's a point there, and then from there down, there is a restricted area. There's one large tree that's shown there that I believe had to be removed. So again, I'm still at a loss how you expect to try to plant anything that's A, going to survive, or has substantial height and diameter to be able to provide sufficient privacy and screening. But okay, I'll leave it to the landscape.
Let me clarify, because I was talking about the northern boundary.
I asked about the eastern.
And if you were just asking about the eastern, I'm sorry if I misunderstood. That does present a bit of a challenge that we can certainly take up at the site plan stage.
Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, Councillor O'Meara, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow on Councillor Duddick's question, so what is the drop of elevation down towards the easternly part of that driveway? How far down is that?
Well, I don't have that information in front of me right now, but the site does drop, but I would have to.
Would it be safe to assume that its headlights would be below the ground at that point?
Well, headlights are somewhat off.
That's fine. I'll take the
well,
hesitancy as maybe not.
We'd have to look at that more carefully at another time.
Okay. It seems that we had a number of concerns around privacy. Would the applicant be or consider some sort of privacy screens on the terrace then to block that?
I think if that was something that needed to be addressed in terms of the privacy aspect, certainly that's something that can be considered at the site plan stage, certainly.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. My turn? All right. Mr. Fay, I would like to ask you if you can find a way to help me over a couple of problems I have with the site. My problems arise from the, well, actually there's, you raised a new one, so let me turn to that one first. Your words sounded to me like you meant that the applicant could consider screening if it was thought necessary at site plan. And so I just need to understand what that means. Does that mean that it's up to the applicant to decide what the site plan requirements would be?
Well, the site plan requirements are a process of negotiation between the applicant and town staff. There are certain givens, there are certain things which are raised that would be issues that staff thought might be appropriate, and the owner may or may not think that they're appropriate, but certainly at the site plan stage, there's ample opportunity to look for solutions to problems that have been identified and in the mind of residents and in the mind of staff and council remain problems. So we're just at the official plan and zoning stage right now, as you know, and the site plan stage is that more detailed stage that gets a good deal more attention in detail from staff and the applicant.
How would you feel about council giving direction, if it were to approve this, giving direction about what certain measures would have to be dealt with satisfactorily in the site plan?
Well, if you can condition, I guess you're not conditioning, you're suggesting in the recommendations that certain matters be looked at the site plan stage. Is that what I understand you to be saying?
I was looking to do something a little more definitive and basically to set or settle certain site plan questions here rather than put it off to a process of negotiation.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if you want to list those items, and I can confer with my client, who may or may not be able to answer.
Oh, all right. That's a good answer. Well, it appeared to me that the overlook issue is the central issue here, or the biggest issue here, and the different places that it shows up is in terms of the adequacy of the the treatment of the windows and what kind of view from the fourth level windows would be had of the near neighbors. That'd be number one. Number two would be the adequacy of the planting space along the north edge and on the east edge. And perhaps it's a bigger problem on the east edge. Although when I zoom in on the illustration that's up here on the screen above me, on my screen, it does appear like the end of the drive might, I don't want to get into designing driveways, I'm not qualified, but it does appear to me that there might be indeed a pinch point such as you yourself earlier acknowledged, and that might need to be addressed. And the other was the issue that Councilor Romero raised, and others raised, which was the terrace privacy treatment. I mean, perhaps the owners of, the prospective owners of these units might themselves like to have privacy from the Berkeley Square people. I mean, privacy is a two-way street.
Yes, it certainly is, Your Worship, so I can speak to my client about that.
Then, so that would be the terraces and the windows that you'll speak to him about. I'm thinking that we might give you a recess. In which is your client here? So I would consider calling a recess to permit this. I'm also concerned that the other issue that I was originally going to approach you with before we got sidetracked on site plan was, help me understand why I shouldn't think of this as overdevelopment. Because when I look at this and I try to reimagine it with 5 units, almost all of the issues start to disappear. I mean, are you sure that you're not just crowding this site by 1 unit too many?
Your Worship, I'm not quite sure I understand how the perceived issues disappear with 5 versus 6 units.
Well, maybe not all of them.
Building envelope would be
the
the same.
remaining issues, I would say. So I mean, take the one we were talking about a moment ago on the eastern edge there. If there's 1 fewer unit, you've got a lot more room to create screening and privacy on the eastern side, no?
Well, I think the owner's intention would be to maximize the building envelope to the extent possible.
We're all clear about that. And,
So-
and what we're really talking about is I need order in the audience. We've had a very neighborly and congenial meeting, and I'd like to keep it that way, please. Which means we're polite with each other. anyway, I leave with you the observation that everything might fit better on the site if there was one fewer unit, just my amateur opinion of the matter. You yourself said, and I hope I quote you accurately, you said you admit that there's not a lot of space for the screening, and I was looking to you in our recess to maybe consider how you might increase that. You had a lovely phrase when you said, "I admit it's still 6 townhouses." I just feel that the overlook has been created because the height is a bit of a, it's a bit of a trick, eh? It's a 3-story building, but it sure looks like 4 levels. And I'm carefully using the word story for 3 and levels for the 4. But anyway, it does result in an appearance. The screenings, the adequacy of the screenings appears in my mind to be linked to the size of the footprint, which is why I ask you to look at the footprint. And those 2 things are what lead me to a feeling that this is really an overdevelopment of the site. And I grant that a lot of effort has been made to try to squeeze this on the site in order to maximize the building envelope, but what I'm asking you to consider with your client is if you haven't maybe over-maximized the building envelope by a touch. And since everything really depends on your conversation with your client, unless you have questions back of me, I'll call a 15-minute recess so that everybody can enjoy a bio break. Councillor Elgar?
I have a question after you're finished of Mr. Fay. If I can get figure number 7 aerial view up on the screen for Mr. Fay? That's just a question to highlight.
So I wasn't last.
Well, you're almost.
I tried to be last.
Sorry about that. It was when we start talking about it's headlights that are bothering me a lot right now. When I look at the figure 7.
I'll just yield here.
It's slide number 2. If you can
Sorry,
blow
which
that
slide
up.
are you looking for, sir?
Your slide number 2, right there. Okay. Mr. Fay, you see the footprint of you can see the problem right there is unit 1, 2, 3, where every time a car comes in, the headlights are going to be shining in day and night, because that's where there is absolutely no screening there whatsoever based on what I can see before me.
Are you talking about Councillor O'Meara's question as well, the east
That question,
end,
Councillor
and
Duddick,
Councillor Duddick's
about lack
question?
of screening, where the area, as you can see on the diagram of how it's going to be done, there's no room to, in fairness, there's no room to plant anything other than a daisy.
Well,
maybe.
there are other ways of screening besides plantings.
But I thought this would help you see how you're truly impacting units 1, 2, and 3 directly.
Yes, well, I think there are other ways of providing appropriate screening for that problem.
Would you screen the whole property with fencing?
Screen the entire property.
Sorry?
Screening the entire property with fencing? Well,
Yes.
that's again
At the
a
back,
site plan
to the north
matter.
and to the east?
That's again a site plan matter. Recognize that would you want to screen the dry pond to the east as well, or would you consider that sufficiently screened now with its own vegetation and whatever? Is it the entire perimeter of the site, not including the roadsides that you're looking at, the north and the east, with some kind of fencing?
That's what something that's fencing that in fact would block headlights. That's a big problem. I've experienced it in Ward 4, and it's one of the biggest concerns people have when they move in and they find out constantly headlights hitting their front all the time, day and night.
All right, so that to me would suggest some screening technique at the end of the driveway for those houses to the east.
Yes.
So I'm certainly not talking to my client
That's
about
what I'm
that.
thinking. And I get nervous every time we talk about site plan, because I realize how little control we have at site plan of the controls we have in place.
I thought, having appeared many times before you, that you had ample control.
Mr. Fay has often felt controlled. So, Mr. Fay, you'll add the, I'll get there, one thing at a time. So, Mr. Fay, I'm taking it that you'll add the headlight screening by whatever means you and your client can come up with to your deliberations during the recess. Is that right?
Did you want, is it now 4 issues or 5 issues or what?
I'm asking you if you would add that. On the green drawing that we previously showed, the green area at the end of your driveway is demarked, it's marked as a shallow drainage swale, and so I believe you're correct to say that something besides plantings might be required. And now I've potentially one more thing for you. Councillor Duddick again.
Thank you. Sorry, through you, Your Worship. I'm a little concerned about doing planning on the fly, as you so often remind us. And why wouldn't we just look at deferring this and give ample opportunity for everybody to have time to review what is being proposed and to put everything in the hopper? If there's a genuine willingness there, why wouldn't we just defer it and go through that?
Well, why don't we see if there's any reason to consider such a thing? We haven't heard back from them yet, right? And your opportunity to defer exists at all times, right? So I will then call a brief recess, and in consideration of the additional issues, we will resume at 9:30. The folks to reappear, and then we'll double back and deal with that item. Beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, I thought half an hour, seeing as we originally said 15 minutes, and now,
Well, we said, no,
okay, whatever.
It changed from 15 to 30, but I'm sorry if now if I can just make this go back to my agenda page. I know. All right. So the next item is confidential discussion, item C3, and I have a suggested motion from the legal department that this item be withdrawn pursuant to the request of the legal department in the memo dated today, April 18th. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Elgar, all in favor? That's carried. And that brings us to the Livable Oakville Official Plan Review Council Subcommittee addendum that was distributed. And they're back. So we'll double back now to item 4. If I can find it. There we go. So when we recessed, we were looking to hear further from Mr. Fay on behalf of his client. Mr. Fay, do you have any news for us?
Yes, Your Worship, I do. I trust I got all of the issues that you had raised copied down correctly. But of course, this is without prejudice. That's understood. For the issue with respect to car headlights, my client's prepared to build an 8-foot tall wooden fence along the east property line from the driveway to the north limit of the property. So I know it might be worth putting one of the figures on the screen so we can be clear what that means.
Maybe the planting slide would show it best. I won't dare ask for it to be zoomed in for fear that we can't do that. But does this help you, this one?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is covering the driveway and to the north property limit, an 8-foot fence, which would be solid wooden fence that should provide the screening.
Okay.
For the north buffer that I spoke about earlier, the client is saying minimum 12-foot cedars in height for the entire length of the buffer. For the windows on the third floor, the client would agree to linear window design above 5 feet from finished floor level, so you'd have a window up off the floor of a certain height. With respect to the question of the number of units, I wanted to make you aware that there had been a reduction in the size of the two end units' width when the adjustments were made to the side yards during the process, which reduced the two garages on those end units to single garages as far as zoning is concerned. So my client cannot see changing from 6 units to 5 units, given the concession already made during the process leading up to tonight's meeting. Now, did I miss anything, Your Worship?
Councillor Elgar, it seems to have.
Oh, pardon me, there is one other thing, yes, the terraces.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Pardon me. When you consider that the buffer strip will have minimum 12 feet high cedar plantings, and when you consider that the terrace floor will be roughly 8 feet off the grade of the garage, it would be impossible for a person standing on that terrace of average height, say 6 feet, with the cedars some 25 feet away, to be able to see into someone's backyard adjoining the development. So we're wondering whether or not there is need for anything further on the terrace. There could be for the people who are sitting on the terrace, who obviously would not be able to see it past these trees as well. The thought was that some form of glass railing, which is popular nowadays on decks and terraces, would be what would be considered for that. And I believe the zoning bylaw calls for 48-inch tall railing, so it could be a glass railing as an attractive feature, but the person standing on the terrace isn't going to be able to see directly north because the cedars are going to block the view from their vantage point.
Well, thank you very much for those submissions. Are there any questions for Mr. Fay? Councillor Elgar. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you. Just so I'm absolutely clear, you've done nothing in terms of height, is that correct? You're still staying at the 12 meter?
Yes, we think the 12 meters is appropriate.
Okay, and you're not decreasing the units, so the massing is still the same?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Councillor Elgar.
It's a question to Mr. Fay, and I appreciate where you've come from with the issues. Would you and your client have any issue if the councillors of Ward 2 had one more meeting with the residents so that everybody can sing a kumbaya and have it come back again in the next cycle? Would that work for both of you?
We were quite hopeful that what I just provided to you would lead to a decision this evening, so I leave it to my client.
And that's, I think you've come a long way, but I think in fairness to the ward councillors, if they had a chance to talk to the residents again, everybody could go away, I would hope happily, but I can't guarantee that. That was my only question. I just was hoping that one cycle wouldn't interrupt anything.
No. I think the answer is they would prefer to have a decision this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Fay, for your information. Now, I guess I should, in my concept of fairness, I should offer Mr. Harris or someone from Berkeley Square the opportunity, if they wish, to add any comments at this point. No requirement, but.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. We've heard about these supposed mitigation measures, but I just want to say that regardless of what is done in the way of fences or cedars, many of my neighbors and ourselves will be looking at a wall 115 feet long and 40 feet high right in front of us, no more than 30 yards from our backyards. Thank you.
So, Mr. Harris, before you leave us with that thought, if I understood this, wouldn't you be seeing cedar hedge? I mean, help me understand how that
With all due respect, Mayor, I don't see how a 12-foot high cedar hedge can hide a 40-foot high wall.
So the distance to the wall doesn't matter to you?
Well, I think we would have to lay it out on a piece of paper, but I can't see myself that the 12-foot high cedars would intervene between a fourth-story window and my living room or bedroom, for that matter.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Mr. Fay, did you have some piece of wisdom on that?
Well, hopefully it's wisdom. Maybe the message wasn't clear that the windows on the third floor, which is what you often refer to as the fourth level, would be off the floor minimum of 5 feet before the glass would appear. So is there something I missed that that's going to restrict the view out of those windows?
Thank you. We understood that, I think. All right, I'll confine it to table. I thank everybody for their input. And Councillor Duddick, did you have a motion to do anything here?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to belabor the point we're getting on in the evening. I sincerely appreciate all the work and effort and input that has gone into this application, not only by the applicant and the owners, but most importantly, the residents who are going to be the most affected by anything we decide tonight. I appreciate that you were trying to find us a soft place to land. However, for me, it comes down to the height is the height, and the massing is still the massing. And as you referenced earlier on in the evening, somewhat gently, an overuse of the property is definitely what I see this. Having gone through the Maurice Garden Land Study, having gone through the D&D process, so many people throughout that whole process were looking to us to give them assurance that we were not going to subject them to the creep factor, as I referenced earlier on. I know we cannot give 100% certainty. However, we went through an extremely intensive and very thorough consultation process with the public, developers, everybody. And through that process and through the in-zone process, we confirmed that we thought low density on those two properties was appropriate. I have serious concern about the saturation point this neighborhood has gone through. They've been extremely patient and very understanding and objective throughout all the planning processes. This, to me, is just the straw that broke the camel's back, quite honestly. I think it's one of those cases where we have to respectfully agree to disagree, and I would ask for council's support in denying the application and staying true to our livable Oakville official plan, which the residents, not only in this area, but throughout the community, participated in and were satisfied with, as was our planning staff. And this just, I know I can only be the mover, but this, of course, is Councillor Chisholm is in full agreement as well.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. You're moving rejection. Correct. Thank you. Are there other speakers? I would like to say a word. Perhaps you'd permit that. I believe that all of the problems that we've heard about here are generated from overdevelopment of the site. I think it's just a touch too big. I appreciate the candid admission that they're trying to maximize the building envelope, and I think that they over-maximized it. And for that reason, I'm going to support Councillor Dudek's motion. And with that, there having been no other speakers, I'll call the vote. All those you can have a recorded vote on request. To support Councillor Dudek's motion, please rise to be named. Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Dudek, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Dudek, your motion carries. I would ask you to perhaps take the opportunity, on the off chance that the rest of our proceedings don't interest you, I would give you a couple of minutes to quietly leave so that we can resume the meeting. All right, Council, given the moment at 9:45, I would ask if you're satisfied with the advisory committee minutes and would like to receive the Livable Oakville Official Plan Review Council Subcommittee of March 20th. Councillor O'Meara, all in favor? That's carried. Just checking to see. What else did I skip over here? I believe we have, going back to, here we go. So we dealt with C2, but C1 sits in front of us. Councillor O'Meara, do you have a need to be in camera for this? It seems to me, it looks to me like a report for a receipt. Are you sure we need to go into camera?
Your Worship, I was looking for information related to the, from our solicitor related to, I believe I do. I'm sorry. I'll just leave it at that. I'm sorry.
Councillor O'Meara moves that we move into a closed meeting session for the purpose of dealing with matters pertaining to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and for receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, with respect to item C1, OMB hearing, Simgin, 2266 Lakeshore Road West, 83 East Street. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and Councillor O'Meara, that carries. And momentarily, we will have the room secured for silent running, or whatever, if I can say that. Okay, Council has returned to public session, having met in a closed meeting session for the purpose of dealing with matters pertaining to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and for receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. With respect to item C1, OMB hearing, Simgen, 2266 Lakeshore Road West and 83 East Street. Now, Council, I believe it's time to rise and report. Oh, yes. Councillor O'Meara, would you move the C1 motion?
Happy to, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So now it's time to rise and report. Could we have a motion to rise and report? Councillor Knoll, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent item 1, confidential consent items C1 and C2, public hearing items 2 and 3, discussion item 4, confidential discussion item C3, and advisory committee minutes item 5, as noted by the clerk. Could I have a mover and seconder for my report? Councillor Hutchins and Councillor Grant, thank you. All in favor? And the report is adopted. Is there new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? I see none. How about consideration and reading of the bylaws? I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Hutchins. All in favor? And that's carried. The bylaws as listed in the agenda, except for 2017-16 and 2017-17, which were not passed. That completes our agenda, and a mighty fine job everybody did of it, too. Thank you for your time and attention, and it's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.